Hello, I'm Anna Brown from Living Joyfully, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts Pamela Rickia and Erika Ellis. Hello.
Hi.
Before we get started, I wanted to encourage you to check out the shop where you can find books, courses, coaching, and information about the Living Joyfully Network. The shop has resources and support for every stage of your journey. You can find the link in the show notes, or you can visit livingjoyfullyshop.com. Today, we're going to be talking about allowing space for our children to cultivate their own inner voice. Erika, would you like to get us started?
I would love to. Yeah, this is fun because I know that I have mentioned my own children's inner voices many times on the podcast before. And I think cultivating the space for them to tune into those inner voices is one of the most important things that I can do as a parent. So when we talk about our inner voice or our children's inner voices, I think it really relates to the idea that people are different, which is something we're always mentioning. So, like our thoughts and our feelings, our bodily sensations, and so much more are so unique to us individually. And so, the inner voice is messages from our thoughts, our feelings, and our bodies that tell us what feels good to us, what works well for us, what makes sense for us. Um, it could be described as our intuition or like our gut, like the phrase listen to your gut, or our heart, like the phrase follow your heart. But the key, I think, to all of these is that it's so internal. It's unique to us as individuals, and no one else can know what our inner voice is saying but us. And so, if as parents we're constantly telling our children what they should feel and think, or implying that there's a right way to feel and think about things, our children can become disconnected from what they feel and think for themselves. And I think it's a pretty common experience in school to kind of lose touch with that inner voice because there are just so many external voices telling children what to do and what is best and what is right. And so when we're talking about unschooling, that is one of the really valuable things I think that we can offer our children is that space and time to cultivate that inner knowing and really encourage them to tune into that inner voice, reassure them that everyone's experience is different and that they're the ones who truly know themselves deeply. And I think having someone there who really believes in their ability to make decisions and believes that they can tune into what works for them is just super empowering for children as they grow and learn. So I'm excited to talk about this.
Thinking back to when, the kids came home from school and, you know, we were together all the time. For me, one thing that when I think about this, that I had a skill I had to learn and really embrace was patience. Like they left school, so, they had that environment. I had, relatively recently left work, all those outer voices were strong. So to actually have the patience to like hold this space for all of us to actually see what bubbles up for us. I mean, it was hard and it was like the most amazing and revealing thing. Like over time, I get like, wow, it's amazing where we go when we leave space for this. And also, it's amazing the time that it takes. Like, it's just so used to the busyness and like, gotta accomplish all these things. We want to do this. Well, if we want to do this, then we gotta do this, and this. It's just so easy to flip into that kind of busyness mode, that accomplishment mode. But to have that patience and hold that space for everyone, it was just like life changing, revealing, like, oh yes, this is human beings. This is how wonderfully we can move through the world when we have that chance to actually see what bubbles up, listen to our inner voice, like just absorb what's going on and make that next choice, kind of moving forward. Like even when we're in the flow, like to get into the flow of whatever it is that we're doing in the moment and just to see where it takes us. was just very beautiful.
It is. I think, oh, so many things that I want to say based on what you just said, but I'm going to go in this direction before I lose it, which was I think kind of the starting point for me was also to learn to listen to my own inner voice because I have a belief, I don't know if it's true or not true, but I have a belief that our true inner voice doesn't seek to control others. And so when I would see me putting like, you should do this, you should do that, that was actually a voice outside of myself that I had incorporated as an inner voice. That was the society or, from my family or from people outside of me or from school. And then I was just this vessel to pass it on to the next generation. And that's the piece I wanted to be hyper aware of. And when I really started to tune into what's my inner voice, what is my priority here, what am I, who do I want to be in the world? You all have heard me, you've said that a million times, like, who do I want to be in the world? That really changed because then I could share what worked for me. I could share what was happening for me, but it didn't have that energy or that judgment of what the other person was doing. So I felt like by me really becoming clear on what my inner voice was telling me, it allowed the space for those around me to be hearing theirs. And my children never went to school. And so what I saw was that they really led the way for me, right? Because I feel like we all come into the world knowing who we are and like what we want to do and how we want to move in that moment. There's lots of growth ahead. Obviously, I'm still growing. But I think we really do have a good sense of ourselves when we come in, and that kind of gets chipped away, various environments or whatever we were exposed to. But I really found that they had a strong sense of that. And when I could not be bringing this vessel of society's, have tos, I learned from them and it just came very naturally to them.
I love that so much. Yeah, that's amazing. Just the like I feel like a lot of times we may have something that feels like this is my inner voice, and it almost feels strongly like this is my inner
Yeah.
voice. But once we start, that's like that peeling back the layers. Once we start thinking about, but where did this belief come from? Do I really believe it? There are a lot of these things that were just super ingrained, since childhood, just societal messages. And so, right, like that, starting with yourself and starting with what is my inner voice saying, it helps me be curious then about everyone else's and knowing that people are different and everyone's inner voice is saying something different. And it made me, when you said that they start their lives, with that strong inner voice, I think that's so true. And it reminds me of, like difficult toddlers, once they start to have their opinions about things. And it can be frustrating sometimes for parents of like, oh my gosh, like I have to try to make them do this thing and they don't want to do this thing. But if we can trust that they know what works for them, and really kind of value learning more about them and being curious about what their inner voice is telling them, and taking that seriously, I think that builds trust so much too, which we talked about recently as well. Just showing them that, like, yes, I care about what your body and your mind is saying about this thing. If you're feeling unsafe in this situation, if you're feeling like, this is not exciting for you, this is not interesting for you, any of those things, where kids may be, give us a clear message of, I don't like this. If we can show them that matters, your opinion about this is important, and I want to learn more about, what's going on for you in that situation. I think that will just, really strengthen the relationship too.
Oh, yeah. I think it really, really does. Like it helps them feel seen and heard. It helps us learn more about them. It helps them build trust in themselves, right? And confidence in themselves. And another thing I wanted to pick up along those lines is, when we talk about supporting them and helping them, listening to their inner voices, that does not mean everything is going to go perfectly, right? It's like that it's back to that open and curious, and to recognizing that we're learning about ourselves and we're learning about things and we're learning about our world, our environment, the people that we live with. It doesn't mean that every choice that they make is going to unfold the way they expected, right? Like that's how we're we're learning more. It's like, oh, I thought it was going to go this way, and it really went in a completely different direction. And maybe I'm super not happy about that right now, but it doesn't mean it's wrong, and it doesn't mean, oh, gee, I should have jumped in and stopped them from following that choice or doing that thing, right? Oh, yes,
And sorry, that just sparked something to me because also the reverse, like even so, okay, bear with me. um, we have the stakes are a little bit lower, right, when they're younger. And sometimes we'll hear people say, well, I pushed them to do the thing they didn't want to do, and they ended up having fun. Like they ended up enjoying it. And so, and that's an interesting thing because, right, I mean, and there's nothing wrong about that necessarily, but I think it's interesting when you look at it through this lens because it does kind of chip away. And so, while you were saying just there, like sometimes they do something and it goes awry, maybe sometimes they make a choice not to go somewhere and they have a regret later, or they think, gosh, maybe I would have liked that, or their sibling went and had fun and they feel bad. But that's learning. That's them learning about themselves versus thinking, I don't make good decisions, so someone else needs to make the decision for me. I don't know what's best for me, so someone else needs to. So it's not about the mistake. That's where the learning is. And so if we can, when the stakes are low, really allow that in childhood, they're building this resilience, this understanding of themselves, how to change and pivot when they realize, I wish I'd done that, or I wish I hadn't done that, or whatever the case might be. We're giving them an opportunity to learn more about themselves because the stakes get higher. And what I didn't want is for them to be second guessing those feelings of safety or, something where, again, stakes are higher in the future. I really wanted them tuning into that inner voice. And if it meant them not going to the event with us, which was probably neither here nor there, if that helped them build that understanding of themselves and that trust in their voice, like, boy, was that worth way more than the show or the photo op or the family Christmas. And so I think just really looking at this broader picture and bringing this lens to it, like how do we develop an inner voice? How do we develop a strong inner voice that serves us? I think that's really fascinating when we look at these relationships.
Yeah, I
Yeah, you
think
look at Erika.
right, those conversations can be so interesting too. And I've had lots of those situations where, it feels like there's something in their inner voice that's saying they might not be interested in this thing, but it's not a strong no. It's a I don't really know enough about it. There's all this nuance to it. So I really feel like if we can go into the conversations without the agenda of my way is the right way, I have to try to convince them as hard as I can to do this thing, then they might be open enough to have conversations where we can ask, what is it about it that feels bad? What is it about it that you are interested in? And just kind of figure out what are the pieces. I remember I might have told this story before, but when we were at this trampoline place, and I just had the sense that Oliver would love to jump on the trampoline, but he was standing on the edge and saying he could not do it. And so we just kept watching and looking. And I was saying, it looks like, you're interested in it, or it looks like that might be fun for you. You love jumping, kind of thing. And so in the end, he did end up doing it, but it was this whole process of like, let me hear the concerns. Let's talk about what it's like. Let's look around and see how safe it seems, like those kinds of things. And I think in that case, it was probably because there were so many other kids there. And so just reassuring him that I was right there and I wouldn't be leaving, like that was kind of the big thing for him at that time. But I wouldn't have known that necessarily. Like he could have been scared he was going to get hurt, or he could have been worried, about any number of things. And so I think that's what's kind of interesting about this is the conversations and what you can learn about your kids.
Yeah, and I mean, and for me, what helped me do that was that patience lens, like to be patient. And as I've learned later, is that not that no agenda piece, right? Because the conversations aren't like that. you were talking about, Erica, aren't very fruitful if they feel like they have a leading energy, even if we don't, because the energy is just so big. It's not just about the words. So even if we don't say, like trying to convince them, there's a tone, there's like, like a rising end to the question. Like there is just that kind of leading energy when it's something that we think would be good for them. And the other piece I wanted to mention that I think is so valuable is it can also feel like in this moment, like maybe we'll never come to a trampoline place again. Like this has got to be, you got to try this out now. And the idea, Anna, that there's plenty of time, your plenty of time mantra that we have talked about on the podcast before, like it's okay to say no. And regret doesn't mean it was a
Yeah.
mistake. Like there is nothing, this is all just learning pieces. Next time you can make a different choice, right? And I think that too is something that's beautiful for them to bring with them as they get older and situations become a little more nuanced, they come a little more like implications from them, etc.
Mhm.
But there still is plenty of time. There's still a similar choice is probably going to come up again, and what you're learning from whatever your choice is and however it unfolds is knowledge you're going to be able to bring with you the next time a similar kind of situation arises, because it really will.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We'll get lots of chances. I'm going to go back to the trampoline example because I think what's so beautiful about that is, and I think it can be kind of a litmus test, is am I leading them towards an outcome? Am I leading him towards jumping or am I leaning him towards understanding himself better? And that was really what you were describing there. So I just kind of wanted to put words to it because what you were helping him do was tease out the pieces of this feels scary, or I'm not sure about that, or what about this? And that's helping him listen to his inner voice, maybe giving words to some things he might not have experience with, but it wasn't with the, I'm going to talk you into jumping because I know you're going to like jumping. You saw a little glimmer of like, I think he's interested in this. I want to dig in a little bit more. And I think that's just that litmus test. Like, do I have this outcome that I think is best? Or am I really just giving them, like we're talking about in this whole episode, space to cultivate that inner voice, listen to it, ask some questions, and move forward no matter what? Because maybe that time he wasn't going to be ready. He wanted to take all that in. And next time you come back, he'd be ready to do the jump. And that would have been just fine too. So I love that piece. And I think that's the nuance of, are we leading them towards an outcome we want, or are we giving them space to really hear themselves and recognizing that, yeah, sometimes, I mean, we all get confused and like, I'm a little nervous about this thing, but what do you think? And then I can talk to somebody that helps me figure out how I'm feeling. So I think that's a beautiful nuance.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Um, that made me think about like just the conversations that we have really help us, like even just a regular conversation. So maybe not even in that high stakes moment is what I'm thinking
Right.
about. So like maybe not when we're standing on the edge of a trampoline, but when we're just hanging out, having conversations where we're showing that people have different feelings and opinions
Yes.
about things, that people are different, and really talking to our kids about how people are different and how, I mean, maybe not even using myself as an example, because I know sometimes there's some weight to that of like, this is what I think is best.
Right.
And so then kids can be influenced by like, oh, well, mom likes that or whatever. But just saying, oh, like this guy feels nervous about, going off the curb on the street. This other guy climbs up, in Yosemite or whatever that is with no ropes. So like people have different feelings about safety and climbing, things like that. And so then when we're in places where they're listening to their bodies and listening to themselves about, does this feel safe to me? They have that experience of like, okay, some people feel really comfortable with this, some people don't, and that's okay. How do I feel? And just opinions about things too, like asking their opinions about things rather than saying, this is good, this is bad, this is what I like, and so therefore you should like it. And I really think it's kind of a red flag that I'm not listening to their inner voice if I find myself trying to convince them really hard that, to do something. So I can use that as kind of like oops, I got a little bit of an expectation. And, I'm just hoping so much that they'll like this thing that I've stopped listening to what their real opinions are about it.
And I think that is super, super valuable because it does not help to put like expectations of perfection on ourselves, right? It's like, what are the clues that for me, I might be pushing past something that I have the intention of not doing, right? It's like, who do I want to be? What kind of parent do I want to be? Where just noticing, oh, after an interaction, oh, that one's because you know what, things are going to go sideways with our kids. They are going to feel like we pushed them or we were trying to convince them, even if we didn't mean to. But that's a learning experience for us too. It's like, oh, like where in that kind of exchange did it feel like I kind of tipped over? And like, how was I feeling? What was it? What was my capacity? Maybe I'm looking for bigger picture
Mhm.
patterns in my life, like just to find the clues to help me be the person that I want to be. And I want to be someone who, cultivates and supports my child, listening to and learning their inner voice. And I loved, Anna, when you're talking about, Erica putting words to their inner voice, because sometimes it's just a feeling, right? And they don't, and even for ourselves, that's what
Yeah.
processing is. It's figuring out and
Mhm.
kind of putting words to the things that we're feeling that are bubbling up for us, that are maybe our inner voice trying to communicate with us or trying to just like knock on our brain for a moment. So I think that is a beautiful thing to be able to look for like the little clues in our life because they are unique to us. People are different again, right? And what are the little pieces that can help me find a moment to like just help myself switch a little bit to be more of the person I want to be in the moment? Because yeah, it's never perfect. And to put an expectation on a relationship that things are going to be perfect doesn't help. That
No.
buries our inner voice as well because
Right.
we're all of a sudden trying to meet expectations, which are out, even if they're expectations we're putting on ourselves, they're like outside weights that we're putting on, right? And that tamps down any inner voices. And then we have just more work to do.
Right. But that, I think that, when you have that feeling like you were describing, Erica, because we've all had it like, I'm pushing a little bit hard here. That's my cue to go, where's that coming from? Because again, I really do believe our inner voice doesn't seek to control others. I think that's outside expectations. I think that's baggage that we're carrying. And so that's my first little, and that's why I say plenty of time all the time, because it slows me down. There's plenty of time for them to try this thing, do this thing, so I can slow down and kind of tease apart what are the expectations I'm bringing to it, what kind of outside voices are influencing me in this moment. And so that plenty of time thing, I mean, you guys know I use it all the time to just slow myself down because I can just get on a track and I really do miss the little cues from the people around me.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like it's even harder to remember there's plenty of time if
Right.
it's like decisions that feel more intense, maybe things related to their health or things about
Mhm.
food, or, if they're having an interest that feels scary to us, like these kind of more activating moments with our kids where it feels like if I can't convince them that I know what's right, things might just go off the rails. And so even in those times, though, there's plenty of time is super helpful. And remembering that their inner voice applies to things like their body's health and
Yeah.
what they should eat and what they're interested in, all of those things too. And people are different in those areas as well. And so if we can just still kind of keep some of that open, curious mindset, even in kind of those heavier weighted areas that we may feel like we have super strong beliefs about, um, that's just going to help them feel supported and know that they can trust us to kind of do this processing and figure out what works for them.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that's what it boils down to. It boils down, for me, it's like that patience lens was helpful to me.
Mhm.
Plenty of
Mhm.
time is helpful. The being open and curious helps me with the patience. Like all those ideas just like weave together for me when it comes to helping each person, be able to listen to, hear, or act from, even if they don't quite understand their inner voice. Just make the choices that feel like they're the best choice they can make in this moment, right? With what's going on for them and what's going on around them.
Right, because I think that creating that environment is part of letting them know there's plenty of time. Like, yeah, you may be getting some mixed messages inside. If you slow it down and take your time, because your body's going to tell you you're going to learn things, and it's okay to try. So I think I'm grateful for this episode, because I think it is really something that we all want. Like, we would all give voice to. We want our kids to listen to their inner voice, but bringing some intention to what does it look like to create that space is really cool.
Yeah. Can I add one more little thing I just
Yeah,
thought of?
please.
Okay, so like those things like health and food and scary interests and things like those have weight, but also the people looking at us, expectations of outside people also can feel like a weight. And so one thing that I want to remind myself is that them listening to their inner voice is more important than what some outside person is thinking about what they're doing. So, as an example, like if they're feeling like there's too many people in here, I need to leave, and this is at a family party, to me, it's more important that they are tuning into that and knowing that they're feeling overwhelmed and stepping away rather than the feeling of, oh, I'm disappointing these other family members. And so really kind of valuing that inner voice development in the kids more than than what the outside people are saying.
And I think something that happens there is we actually give people permission to do that themselves, because so I definitely would have that with my oldest. And I mean, I would just frame it like, I love it that she knows herself so well that she needs some space right now. And I mean, invariably somebody would say, I wish I was better at that, or gosh, there's times I want to get out of here. And then it becomes light and laughter. Whereas I have absolutely had the feelings you're talking about there too, where it's like, are we hurting somebody's feelings? Is the host going to think we don't like them? Is it, this kind of thing? But that's outside, right? My inner voice isn't trying to control anyone and can share those beautiful connecting pieces. That outside voice is when I'm trying to control all the things. And so it's just that litmus test.
Yeah, and I mean, that's those were moments when, as over time, I became like, I can just step into that moment and I would just actively share the positive perspective, right? Um, and it felt, because it does so many things, right? It's protective of the person who needs to do whatever it is they need to do. And also, like you were saying, it's planting that seed that it's okay. And I'm almost talking, to myself when I am, talking about how that's a positive thing and a great thing to do. Like they say, I wish I could, and I say, I wish I could.
Oh my goodness. Okay. As always, so much fun, you two. Thank you both for being here. And thank you for everyone listening. We hope you found that helpful on your unschooling journey and just your journey in life in general. And if these kind of conversations are fun for you, please, please, please join us at the Living Joyfully Network. We have so much fun and so many interesting conversations. I get so much out of it every day. I am grateful for it. So we would love to see you there, and you can learn more about it in the show notes. There will be a link, or at livingjoyfully.com. I was going to say .ca/network. That's one place to get it. You can also get it from the shop. So we hope to see you there, and thanks so much for listening.
Bye.